She got her bachelor's in paper engineering at State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry, works full-time at a paper factory, and yet somehow has found time to visit 6 of the 7 continents, 56 countries, and 32 of the 50 United States, much of that via solo travel. Most recently, visiting Tonga to swim with humpback whales and their babies, you guys. She's a 20-something smarty pants, paper engineer, Great Dane mom, Marcina Rogers, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. Do you know when I first met you and you told me that you were a paper engineer, I thought it meant you were an industrial origami person.
Yep. I was thinking about that on the way over here too. I was like, first time we met was very interesting.
Well, we met at the vendor event because of Judd, your Great Dane.
Yep.
And do you want to know a secret?
What?
It was a vendor event where it was for dogs. So knowing that and knowing I needed to get people to come to my tent in order to make the vendor event worth it, I sprinkled dog treats in front of my tent so that the dogs would come to me and then I can meet their owners. And aren't you so glad? Because now we're friends.
I know.
Thanks, Judd.
He's always making friends. He's the first one to meet him.
That's true. Every time I see you downtown, you've got a line of children who want to ride the horse.
Yep.
That's very cute. So tell me what a paper engineer really is, because you don't do origami.
No, I don't. So in essence, I'm recognized as a chemical engineer, but for schooling, we focus more on the paper industry. So I took intro to lignocellulosics, which is organic chemistry of trees, and then history of paper making, mechanical engineering as well. So I focus more on the mechanical side in the role that I'm in or was in before. So kind of how rolls work and bearings and stuff like that, and how it applies to making paper.
That's so cool.
Yep.
I was so impressed that where you work now has so many female engineers. Is that normal in your specific field of engineering?
No. So I was the only girl. Granted, there was only 6 of us who graduated in paper engineering.
Oh.
So it was very small, but the industry is growing. My mill that I've seen has definitely more women than I've seen on a general basis in the industry.
Enough to do an entire Mary Kay party full of them.
That is true.
Which, when I told my husband, who's also in engineering, he's in civil engineering, he was like, I'm sorry, what? There's how many women who work there? And I'm like, yeah, and they're all super cool.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when I think of people who go into engineering, they have a pretty traditional mindset. They have families that have traditional skill sets, traditional attitudes about jobs. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, people who have that traditional mindset, travel is not a part of that at all. It's usually, sometimes it even comes with a little bit of nationalism where, I'm just going to stay right here. Where the heck does that come from in you? Because you've been everywhere.
So it started when I was young. My parents actually brought in an exchange student when I was a baby. So my brothers and I are very close in age. My brother and I are 15 months apart, and then him and then my youngest brother are 11 months apart, so they're Irish twins.
Oh, God bless your mom.
Right. So when we were young, we had an exchange student who would come every summer, and through that, she became part of our family, and we went to her wedding. I go to visit her kids now, so she's part of the family, and from that, we got to be introduced to different cultures and different languages from the get-go, and with those connections, that's when my parents started bringing us out of the country and different places, because for them, working so much, because they were in the printing side of the paper industry, and working so much for them, the family time was a huge aspect of life that they wanted for us.
And family travel time, it sounds like.
Yeah,
which is a whole nother... That's family time on a whole nother level. Can we be real for a minute? Yeah. When you travel, a lot of families have to self-medicate in order to tolerate each other. Even my husband and I, we love to travel, obviously. You and I have that in common about just making it a priority. Mm-hmm. But when I express my desire to travel and I tell stories about travel to other people, from more than one person, I've gotten the comment, wait, you went on vacation for 12 days just with your husband? Yeah. Did you all meet up with anybody? No. And you went just with the two of you? And I'm like, yeah. And they say, I could never spend that much time with my husband. So, I mean, that's kind of sad. But I guess it happens. And so it says something about your family that they wanted to be together and they wanted to travel together, which is really super cool. So that's when the travel obsession obviously began for you.
Yeah, because it was a link of my family that we could hold special to each other and have those stories. We have one. We drove from London to Madrid for the wedding in Spain, and we were in France, and in Europe they shut down for a month. It's holiday month, not week. And we were in the rental car. We could not find the resort that we were staying at. So we parked at a church and slept in the car, and the church bell would ring like at random times, like 1:37 a.m. And my mom was like, one day you guys are going to tell those stories at your weddings or at somebody's funeral. It will be the story that we tell in our family for the rest of our lives.
That's hilarious. I thought it was just my mom that said that because we would just travel from Nebraska to Florida every year, and crazy things would happen. One time what's that green fluid in the car? It's like
not the
cooling fuel.
The coolant?
Yeah, it smells real bad. Yeah, that one. It leaked inside the car. So it looked like Ninja Turtle slime in the car. And she kept saying, isn't this exciting? This is so exciting. It's an adventure. And then we were like, it's not an adventure. We want to play Nintendo. So it must be like travel mom normal things to do.
Yeah.
So with a traditional job, like how do you make time for travel? Because a lot of Americans don't have enough vacation time.
Yeah, so I was lucky in the fact that my company gave me 3 weeks to start with. However, it's still not as much as the rest of the world gets. So for me, what I found is that I need to make the most of the time that I have. So whether it's putting a week with the weekends, obviously, and being efficient in when I plan, like the planes or driving, whatever it might be, to be efficient in that. And then traveling is my passion, so that's what I make time for, and that's what I use my vacation for. Seeing my family obviously is huge, being that I moved 1,300 miles away from them, but those are easy weekend trips and holidays. So they understand, and actually now it's gotten to the point my parents come with me for some of them too. If they hear that, like last year I was going on a cruise, they're like, okay, we'll come. So they'll just join me for whatever I might be doing next.
Because they value travel too, exactly. So they get it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the travel, you've gone solo, which is way different than traveling with a family, and way different than traveling with a family as a child, because everything's planned for you. Your job is to go along and argue, as least as possible.
Yes.
What was your first solo travel trip like?
So without my family, one of my best friends from college, she was from China. And so this was my first time without my family, but flying there, I was with her and through my time there. So this was my first flight back by myself. And I was flying through Dubai and everything, and like on these huge aircrafts that I've never been on before, the double-decker ones. And I'm like, this is so cool. So that experience too for myself was really interesting. And it kind of was like, okay, let me try something different. And then in college, I decided to study abroad. And I think that was when it was like the big kicker of like, well, I've traveled and moved to Germany by myself. I can travel by myself anywhere I want to go. Yeah. So from there is when I kind of grabbed it and just kept going with it.
Because your confidence was totally boosted by the fact that you, flew from China to the U.S. and then followed up with living in Germany.
Yeah.
Wait, do you speak German?
No.
No. How were you an exchange student in Germany and not speak German?
So it was during my bachelor's degree, but it was the master's program there. And the master's program is in English.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay. So you got lucky.
I did.
Is there any special considerations that people should take if they do plan to travel solo?
Safety is always key. You have to do your research I spend weeks on weeks just researching where I want to go, what I want to do, the area. I backpacked through Africa by myself, and that's not something for the lighthearted or the people who don't want to put in the effort to make sure that they're safe. I've been around riots and protests and stuff like that, so it's very important for me and those who want to travel solo that they do the research they need, especially just even like buses and things like that you might not think of here in the U.S. It's a whole nother world, obviously.
Literally. Well, not a whole nother world, but a whole new country.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if being a curious person helps you plan.
Yeah. You find different ways and different resources. So everyone kind of thinks it's kind of interesting. I use Pinterest a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, for when I travel.
It's so great, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's actually the starting point of how I travel.
Yeah.
Is Pinterest.
That's how I found Tonga, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, because I was looking at things to do when I go to Australia, and then they're like, well, you can swim with humpback whales.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It's the only place in the world you can do that, so.
It's amazing. Well, do you follow the Bucket List family?
No, I don't.
They're a family that just travels pretty much full time. They were in Tonga at the same time you were.
Oh, really?
And I couldn't, well, because it's whale season,
Yeah.
so it's not like a huge coincidence. But I couldn't help but think, because I would fangirl so hard if I saw them, because that's kind of their life. And, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's what you don't see, though, on social media is the planning part of it, of the research and the questions that you have to ask.
Right.
And then making sure that you're safe when you get there. I remember you telling me about your plans, your preparations for your Africa trip were really specific. And you were also very strategic not to share on social media before that you were planning to go to Africa because the freak out of other people was not helpful.
Right.
And sometimes that's, we found that when we went to Nicaragua, everyone asked us if we were going on a missions trip. I was like, what? Is that, okay, so many follow-up questions to that, but no, yeah. So that was, it was eye-opening to kind of insightful to see what other people think of certain countries and why Americans would go to those countries. What's something that you feel like people misunderstand about travel?
Oh, that's a hard one. For Americans, I find that most people think every other country is unsafe. Most Americans stick with Europe or Mexico, just being that it's close. But there's a lot more out there that I found. People are all the same everywhere you go, and you're not going to be unsafe. Or just because this country is having these issues right now doesn't mean you're going to see them or be involved in them heavily. In some cases, I have come across that, and not knowingly walking into it. But for me, I think I get a lot of the sayings of like, well, why are you going there? It's unsafe. Like, it's unsafe here sometimes too. So for me, I think a big misunderstanding is definitely people think that just because of what they hear on the news is the whole entire country or every single person in that country.
I would agree. I hear also people say that it's too expensive to travel.
Yeah.
It's way more expensive to travel to the United States.
Yes.
We could have gone to Europe twice for what we paid for Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah. I believe it.
It hurt. But it was awesome, and I don't regret it at all. Yeah. How do you plan financially for your trips?
So I look at the big things of ticket items of like what I want to do. So obviously like swimming with whales is not cheap, and hiking Kilimanjaro isn't either. So to begin a budget, like I'll look at flights. So I'll start planning, and Google does great with their Google Flights and alerts. So you can just set up alerts and see what price that you're typically going to have to pay. And then, if you're doing a big activity or a resort or something of that sort, you can start tracking and seeing that price. And then food and beverages is really up to what you want to spend. I pretty much don't drink when I go on vacations because I'm not there to party or drink. And then food-wise, it's, okay, well, I'll have a really good meal here this day. And it's really the budgeting is the big factors of, the flights are a huge part. And then, like, a main activity that you're doing or your places that you're staying. So I break it down into flight, accommodations, activities, and then food and beverage.
It's so funny how similar we are.
Yes.
Like I feel like I'm talking to part of me right now. I have a travel binder.
Yep.
It is do you do?
No, I don't have the binder. I have like filing.
Okay.
Not the binder though.
And I travel with it. And people ask me if I'm like a travel assistant. And I'm like, oh no, this is a binder from high school. See, look, it said math on it before. And I like covered it up with a label. And it has subcategories of flight accommodations, especially when you do a multi-country trip. Stuff gets complicated.
Yes.
And well, not complicated. It's just, there's just a lot of moving parts to it. And so I try to keep that all together. And yeah, it's dork level 5,000.
Oh no. I have folders. And then when I went to Australia and one of my friends came with me, I made her a folder.
Oh.
She was like, okay, type A. I see.
You're like, engineer, back up, Jack.
Pretty much.
So I wanted to give some people some advice who maybe want to travel, but maybe they would be in a situation where they need to solo travel, because I think how most Americans are brought up, travel is not your top priority. It's not a thought that we have. We go to high school, we go to college, and then you get a mortgage. And that's kind of like the natural order of American life. And nothing wrong with that. But for people who want to think outside the box but didn't come from a family like yours, I thought of like a couple of tips, and I was hoping we could like go over them together. Maybe we can add to it. So the first one that I thought of was choose a destination based on an activity that you'll enjoy. Because if you're solo traveling, chances are you'll find someone else there who's also by themselves. And look, y'all already have something in common. You enjoy this activity. We found that when we have had a lot of surf-centric travel to Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and we're never low on friends.
Right.
Because look, we have in common with these people, we like to surf. The second one was to book accommodations in a communal space, like a hostel or a lodge, versus a hotel or Airbnb. You're laughing.
I am, because most Americans will not look at a hostel one bit. But I agree. I think if you're solo traveling, I mean, my parents and I stay in hostels now. My parents have become accustomed to actually staying in hostels. So being open to it and trying it once, try something that's a little more upscale, maybe a little more expensive, and then you can easily find the communal environments way more fun.
There's different types of hostels. I think we should add what a hostel is perceived to be as maybe Mythbusters, because there's definitely the dorm room style bunk bed situation with the 20-somethings. Yep. And God bless you Australians, if any of you are listening. Y'all are the loudest. You're way louder than Americans. Okay, we can hear you all the way down the street, which was the case in Nicaragua, because we stayed at a hostel. So there was that type, but we found that there's what I call 30-something hostels for those of us who are not in our 20s and don't like to party like you. Who just want a little bit more communal stuff. So we had like a private bathroom, we had a very simple living space, but we didn't hang out in there. There was like a communal kitchen, and the woman who did the artwork for this podcast, I met that day.
What?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So
wow.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So, and we're going to go to Germany and like hang out with them and visit. I still keep in touch with all the folks from Wild Waves Hostel, Nicaragua. So Popoyo. So I would definitely say that. And then the third tip I had was look for a Facebook group about traveling to that location, because you can find travel tips and recommendations from other solo travelers and even like ask questions and get answers. That's been something I stumbled upon once on accident, but it's been such a huge asset, because you can be nervous about something and just say, hey guys, I'm nervous about this. Help me out. And have you ever used any of those?
Instagram, I'll find like the people, like the woman who organized the humpback whales. Like I'll find those kind of people. I haven't used Facebook groups though. Okay. Only when I was moving to Germany and they already made the group for us.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, not like general travel groups. Yeah. Surprisingly, Yellowstone didn't have a very helpful one. I thought about starting one, but then I was like, Meredith, you already have too much on your plate. Well, because when you travel to Yellowstone, there's this issue of bear spray.
Right.
And you have to have bear spray. So being a preparer, I ordered bear spray off of Amazon. You can't fly with bear spray.
No, aerosol can.
So, well, it's not that it's an aerosol can. It actually lists bear spray in prohibited items on the TSA website. Because you can fly with hairspray.
Oh, okay.
You just can't fly with something that can kill a 400-pound mammal attacking you. So anyway, so I thought it would be cool if there was like a supply exchange at Yellowstone. So maybe someone listening will create one.
Yeah.
I just didn't decide. I decided that I didn't want to put energy towards that, but it would have been very helpful.
Yeah.
So, and this isn't like a preparation tip, but I think being curious is really key, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and what you're curious about, start there and start digging, because you never know what you're going to find.
That's so true. And when you're there, be curious.
Yeah.
We had a taxi driver from the Nicaragua airport to the hostel, and I kind of asked him secretly, like, well, not secretly, but I asked him, like, you know, what do you think of Americans? I was kind of nervous. And he's like, actually, I really like you guys because you're really curious. And so he said, you know, some people, they sit in the back seat and they don't ever talk to me. They don't ask me questions. He goes, you already know about my whole family, my family farm, my last girlfriend, like all the things. I was like, ooh, sorry, is that too personal? But he was great, you know, and then looking back, I realized maybe I didn't need to sit in the front seat, but I just didn't want to get car sick. But yeah, so when you're traveling, are you like me? Are you like the incessant question asker, the excuse me, sir, who are you? Tell me about your life.
Yeah. And usually it's like, especially if I'm in a Spanish-speaking country, and I know we have that in common too, we like to speak Spanish. So I'll use any Spanish I can. Like I'll get in the car, like in Nicaragua, and we're just sitting there chit-chatting, and I'm like, wait, you got too far. You went too far. Back up. So definitely, like, I ask questions all the time, and everywhere, every Uber, every taxi that you get, they're going to ask you, typically, if they can see that you're American, and then the conversation won't end until you get there. Then you'll get their card, like, I'll bring you anywhere you want. So that's what we did in Nicaragua. We had the same driver the whole time we were there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest takeaways that you've got from traveling?
I already said it, but people are the same everywhere you go. The bigotry of it, and like, everyone hurts, everyone loves. So it's good to connect on levels, no matter what the background is, and see people and how they live. Because you don't need to have the materialistic things that the U.S. really focuses on. And even someone said it to me the other day. She looked at me and she goes, "You're a minimalist. I can see it." I'm like, well, thanks, I think. But I look at it that way. Like, most of the world doesn't have anything close to what we have here. And so seeing that and taking that away and bringing it back to what you do here every day is important. That's
so good. Yeah. And you realize the treasure is in other people.
Right.
Other people are the treasure.
Exactly.
And you just have to uncover it by getting your head out of your phone.
Exactly.
And talking to them.
Yep.
Yeah. So where can people follow your travel adventures on social?
So my biggest one now, I just started my new travel Instagram. So travel_over_all. So travel overall. And that you can kind of follow me throughout all of it. I started it when I was in Africa, so now it's kind of progressed into Australia, and then I'm kind of going back in time to like other trips I did as well. So that's the big one that I have everything on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. This was great, and I can't wait to see where you go next, which is
Antarctica. Hopefully, as long as everything goes through.
I'm pretty excited about that. I'll be living vicariously through you, as I'm sure lots of us will. So thank you, girl. That's a wrap.